There's something you already do with your dog when nobody else is in the house, and you'd be a bit embarrassed if a neighbor heard you doing it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That thing you do when you're making dinner, or when you come in after a bad day and it's just the two of you. Here's what I want you to know before we go any further. That instinct you've been quietly apologizing for is one of the most valuable things you do for him all week, and there's real science behind why. I'm saving that one for the end. Hi everyone, I'm Leo Bennett, your neighborhood dog guy. Now let me tell you what this video is and what it isn't. It isn't a list of things you're doing wrong, because you're probably not. Most owners I meet are doing the big stuff well. He's fed, he's walked, he's loved, he's looked after. What I want to talk about is smaller than that, and it's the stuff nobody mentions, because none of it costs money and none of it takes much time. 6 things your dog has been asking you for, in a language you were never taught to read, probably for years. And here's what makes them worth your 20 minutes. Dogs don't tell you when these are missing. They don't sulk about it and they don't act out. They just quietly become slightly less present in their own house. A bit more distance, a bit less checking in. A dog who's there but isn't quite with you. And most people never connect that to anything. I've missed every one of these at some point. So today, 6 things, why each one matters, and the correct way to do it. And the one you're already doing goes last. Quick note before we carry on. This is one chapter of a much bigger conversation about what your dog is trying to tell you, and I've gathered all of it into a book called The Happy Dog Manual over at leodogsecrets.com. Go take a look if you want more happy years with your dog, that's all. Let's start with the one people actively undo. Your dog takes himself under the bed, or wedges in behind the sofa, or presses into the corner behind a chair when the house gets loud, and you crouch down and coax him out, because it looks like something's wrong. Almost everybody does this. But in that moment, he wasn't asking for help. He was solving the problem himself, and you took the solution away. Dogs come from animals who used dens. Not now and then, but as a daily piece of survival equipment. And that instinct didn't switch off when your dog started sleeping on a sofa. It's still running underneath everything, and it comes online the moment he's overwhelmed. And having somewhere to retreat to genuinely does seem to help. Dogs with a consistent, enclosed resting space tend to look less stressed than dogs without one, on the behavioral measures and on stress hormones. The correct way. Give him one, then defend it. A crate with the door left permanently open, a bed in a quiet corner, a blanket under a table. It doesn't matter which one you pick. What matters are the rules. Nobody follows him in there. Nobody reaches in. The kids do not get to climb in with him, and that isn't negotiable, because a dog who can't get away from something is a dog who eventually has to deal with it another way. And dealing with it another way is how bites happen in houses where nobody saw it coming. And put it somewhere he can still see the room, because most dogs want to opt out of the chaos, not out of the family. The corner of the living room usually beats the spare bedroom. Second, and this one's harder than it sounds, stop touching him when he didn't ask. Be honest about your day. He's lying on the floor, you walk past, and your hand comes down without you deciding to. He's sitting quietly, you sit down beside him, and your hands find his head automatically. Of course they do. You love him. But from his side, every touch he didn't initiate is a small message that his signals don't change anything. 1 or 2, no big deal. 40 a day, for years, and you've quietly taught a dog that saying, "not now," changes nothing, so there's no point saying it. That's the bit that matters, because a dog who stopped asking is a dog you can no longer read. There's research suggesting dogs who have more control over when interactions start show fewer anxiety and displacement behaviors and better bonds than dogs whose contact is entirely handler-led. And it's worth being honest that this is one study rather than settled fact, but it lines up with everything I see in people's houses. The correct way. Learn what an invitation looks like. The chin on your knee, the nose shoved under your hand, the slow walk over that ends with him leaning into your leg. Those are him choosing you, and they're easy to miss because they're quiet. Everything else is you choosing for him. And here's the practical version, the 5-second test. Pet him for 5 seconds, then stop and take your hands away. If he leans in, nudges, or repositions, he's asking for more. If he stays still, looks away, or gets up, he's finished. It costs nothing and it changes something. It will feel like withholding affection for the first week. It isn't, and you'll get it back with interest. Most people find their dog starts coming to them more, not less, because you've quietly become somebody it's safe to move toward. Third, and it's the cheapest thing on this list, get on the floor with him. Not to clip his nails, not to clean something up, not to check a paw, just to be down there. Think about what you look like to him. You are enormous, you move fast, you control the doors and the food and every schedule in the building. Dogs read posture and height constantly. It's a huge part of how they assess each other. And a standing human leaning over the top of a dog is, in dog terms, quite a lot. It doesn't mean he's frightened of you, and it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means some part of him is always running a small calculation about the large, fast-moving thing above him. Sit down on the floor, and that calculation changes completely. The correct way. Go into whatever room he's in, sit on the floor a few feet away, and do nothing at all. Don't call him, don't pat the ground, don't talk. Just be there at his height. Some dogs will come straight over. Some will look at you for a long moment and then let out an enormous sigh and settle deeper into the floor, which is honestly the better result. That's a dog deciding he doesn't need to keep an eye on you for the next 10 minutes. 10 minutes a day is plenty, and it's worth 10 times that for a rescue dog, a shy dog, or a dog who flinches when people move quickly around him. You can spend months building that kind of confidence with treats and commands, or you can sit down and let your body say it instead. One thing to be careful with. Sitting on the floor is not an invitation to grab him when he gets close. If he comes over and gets handled every time, you've turned the floor into a trap and he'll stop coming. Fourth, and this is the one most people undo on every single walk. Let him finish the sniff. How many times have you shortened the leash to move him off a patch of grass, a lamppost, a spot where another dog stood 3 days ago? Most of us do it dozens of times a walk without registering it. Here's the scale of what you're interrupting. Estimates put a dog's olfactory receptors somewhere in the hundreds of millions, against roughly 6 million of ours. The exact numbers move around by breed and by who's counting, but the gap isn't close. And the part of the brain given over to processing smell is proportionally enormous compared to ours. When his nose goes down, he isn't dawdling, and he isn't being difficult. He's reading. Who came past, what state they were in, how long ago, whether he's met them before. And this is the part people don't know. Sniffing appears to genuinely lower a dog's stress levels, and a walk with plenty of sniffing seems to do more for a dog than the same distance covered briskly. The correct way. Split the walk deliberately. Some of it is structured, leash loose, next to you, working. Then you give a release word, go sniff, and he gets to lead for a few minutes and finish what he starts. 3 minutes at one patch of grass feels to you like nothing happening at all. To him, it's the first conversation he's ever been allowed to finish, and there's a decent chance it's the most interesting thing that happens to him today. And if your dog is reactive or anxious or wound up on walks, this is the single highest value change on this list. A sniffing walk in a boring field will do more for him than another lap of the busy route. Fifth, and it's the one that quietly holds everything else up, build a rhythm he can count on. He waits by the door before you're actually home. He materializes in the kitchen at tea time more reliably than your phone alarm. That isn't a cute quirk. That's him showing you how he organizes the world. Dogs don't experience time in hours, they experience it in sequences. This happens, then that, then the quiet bit, then the walk. He's built his entire emotional map out of that order, and you're at the center of it. When the map holds, he can relax. When it doesn't, there's nothing to hold on to and no way for him to know when it'll be back. Unpredictable routines come up repeatedly in the research as a contributor to chronic anxiety in dogs, and the disruptions that matter aren't dramatic. They're meal times drifting by an hour, walks that vanish for 3 days, coming home at wildly different times. The correct way. And I want to be realistic here because you have a life and your life will not run to a timetable. You don't need a robotic schedule. You need a few fixed points he can navigate by. Roughly consistent meal times, a walk that happens at a recognizable part of the day, and some kind of predictable wind down in the evening. Anchor points, not a stopwatch. 3 of them beats 20, and the evening one probably matters most because that's the stretch of day where a dog with nothing to expect just waits. A dog who knows roughly what's coming next isn't spending the day partly braced, and a dog who isn't braced has a lot more capacity for everything else in this video. Which brings me to the last one, and the thing I opened with. Talk to him. Not commands, actual talking, out loud, the way you'd talk to someone you live with. Most people do this, and almost everybody feels faintly ridiculous about it, and I'd like to take that away from you, because the instinct is completely sound. Dogs have lived alongside us for somewhere between 15 and 40,000 years, and in that time, they didn't just learn to put up with us. They got extremely good at reading us, our faces, our gestures, our moods, and especially our voices. No other domestic animal comes close. Brain imaging work has found that dogs process speech in a way that separates the words from the tone they're delivered in, which is more or less what our own brains do. Other work suggests they can tell when speech is aimed at them rather than at somebody else in the room, even when the words are identical. They know when you're talking to them. He has been listening this entire time. Real-world example. A woman I worked with had a rescue who'd been in her house 8 months and still wouldn't settle in the same room as her. He'd take himself off to the hallway and lie there instead. She'd tried everything: treats, training, a new bed, a plug-in diffuser. What eventually shifted it wasn't any of that. It was that she started narrating. Not talking to him exactly, just saying out loud what she was doing while she did it. Putting the kettle on, sorting the post, complaining about her day to nobody in particular. Within about 3 weeks, he'd started following her from room to room and settling wherever she landed. She hadn't trained anything. She'd just become predictable and audible, and that turned out to be the thing he'd been waiting for. The correct way. Say good morning. Tell him what you're cooking. Talk to him in the car. Tell him when you're going out and roughly when you'll be back. He won't understand the words, but he'll learn the pattern, and a dog who gets a warning before you disappear copes better than a dog who looks up and finds you gone. Use his name when you actually mean him, and a different tone when you're just thinking out loud, because he's better at telling those apart than you'd guess. And say the thing out loud, whatever it is you say when nobody's listening. You never needed to be embarrassed about that one. So take this one thing out of all 6. Everything here is free and none of it is training. A place he's allowed to go and not be followed. Hands that wait to be invited. 10 minutes on the floor doing nothing. A walk where he gets to finish reading. A few fixed points in the day. And your voice, in the room, aimed at him. And listen, if you've sat through 20 minutes of a stranger telling you how to be closer to a dog you already love, you were never the problem. So tell me in the comments which of these you already do without ever having thought about it. The one who talks to his dog all the way through the washing up. The one who sits on the kitchen floor. Tell me which one you're going to start this week. I read every one, and they decide what I make next. Now go and find him and say something out loud.